It says preparing. Give it a
Hey, Tony, I'll moderate.
Done.
Here we go.
Is that it? We're good? We're live?
We're live.
Awesome.
Good to go?
Good to go. All right. Welcome.
It's now streaming live. It says, hey, there you go.
Hey, TJ, you're
all right. So we've got the whole night beer. We're talking freight crew here.
Wait a minute.
With a couple people that we're excited. I mean, we're just excited to have here to talk with us. And
that is not the right thing. Is that it? We're good? We're live?
We're live.
Awesome.
good to go?
Good to go. Huh.
All perfect here, right? All lights are green.
This is why I'm not a tech guy.
I'm sitting here watching this on YouTube, and it looks like we are live right now.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. So yes, we are live.
It's on?
And it looks like. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Good deal. All right. Eric is our guest today. Eric is a friend of mine. We go back forever. Freshman year of high school. Today, we're talking about what it's like to be a leader, what it's like to be in an entrepreneurial environment and startup, how that relates to freight. Nick is joining us, and so is Kevin Hill. So let's just jump right in. What kind of questions do you have for somebody? Eric, tell us about you first. Let's go with that. What's your story?
You didn't tell me I was going to have to talk about myself. I don't want to do that. Well, yeah, I guess we'll start with Tony. It's good to talk to you, and especially here. So yeah, we're friends from way back, and we know too much about each other. So we'll have to stay away from some of those things about the brashness of youth. Maybe we can avoid those topics, but no, I guess real quickly, I used to run a steel processing company, and I was in that for about almost 20 years. It was out of college, all the way through where I ultimately sold that business and decided to retire from the steel business. And then I started a software company. I like to tell people it's tale as old as time, right? You go from the steel industry into the software industry. So everybody knows that's a
natural progression.
It's a natural progression.
They both start with S.
Yeah, that's about the only thing that they have in common. So no, but that the steel business is where I found and grew a passion for leadership, mostly and primarily because I wasn't very good at it. I was failing publicly in front of everybody, and so I realized I had to get better at it, and grew into a passion, and then got a little bit of a just an idea of, hey, how can technology and leadership, how can technology help leadership and help leadership development? And so that was the seeds of my company that I have now. So anyhow, that's really high level, but that's, I guess, maybe the major bullet points.
Awesome. Nick, give me the elevator speech on your background. We've had you on before, but show us again for the new people.
Let's do it again. Yeah, I don't want to do the full one because that's like 45 minutes. So let's not do that one. Same for me actually. The way as Eric is saying, it's like I came from a background of design. That's kind of like where I just started out like 15, 20 years ago. And I came into tech probably 2 years ago, and logistics. So I don't think anybody can with this says I'm going to go into logistics. You always roll into it, right? Or like I think everybody has the same way of doing that. So it's the same for me. Where when you ask how did you get into this, I can't remember. It just came to be. And yeah, we're on an exciting path, and we've been on a couple of shows and stuff, and what the truck a couple of times where it's like it's all about tech, and it's all about making the environment and the planet leaner and cleaner. So so that's how I was rolled into it, and then started out a couple of companies like in the meantime. So I just can't sit still. That's probably the short story. I can't sit still. I need to do something and make everything better. And the big word, although I get thrown about too much lately, but sustainability is a big thing through everything I do, through tech and design. So yeah, that's where I am. Based in Scotland, awesome. If anyone cannot really understand a single word I'm saying tonight, then my apologies.
We love it.
Especially after a couple of these.
What time is it there right now?
It's now almost quarter past 11 at night.
It's good to have you late at night.
Exactly.
Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin, welcome. Tell us about yourself.
So like Nick said, I don't think too many people choose transportation. We have a saying around FreightWaves that you don't choose transportation chooses you. And that's how I got into it. I got into transportation later in life. I sold a bunch of different things, some, financial, like white papers, sponsorships, some M&A type of publications, conferences. I was doing that for about a decade in New York, came back to Oklahoma, got an MBA, thought that would solve all of my issues. Didn't really, it was back during the recession as well. So I got into transportation. I became a freight broker and did that for about 3 or 4 years until I got into my first entrepreneurship type of situation. And then I was building a database of carriers for freight brokers to source from. It just made sense to me. Something I wanted and needed and just didn't have at the time. So I thought I'd go out and make it, and learned a lot about online marketing, about partnerships, about networking, getting out there, which got me here at FreightWaves. It's just out hawking and marketing carrier lists. I ran into Craig and everybody and did some research, some collaboration. And about 1.5 years ago, he offered me a job to do research at FreightWaves. And I didn't quite realize that we were starting a TV network whenever I walked in the door, but we are now. And I host a couple shows. I host a freight sales show, Put That Coffee Down with Dooner, who I think was on the show last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
He's an interesting character. Definitely. It's great to work with him and Emily, and they taught me a lot about TV and shows and podcasting. So I do that. And I also do right now the Midday Market Update, which is our new show that we do at noon on Eastern time. We do all our shows noon Eastern time, but Tuesdays and Thursdays, where I do news and interviews. And I also run editorial now. So we have the largest, FreightWaves print side, the largest eyeballs of any industry publication in freight and logistics, and we have the one and only TV network for freight that is ramping up and doing extremely well.
Awesome. All right. Well, Eric, you were also calling yourself not a very good leader at the steel place, because I guarantee you were, because, well, I don't know. I'm starting to second guess that. You put me in a leadership role with no experience whatsoever. I got to cut my teeth at the same place in a much smaller scale, and I was really bad at it for a long time. And thankfully and graciously, I was allowed to continue. And I think I got a little bit better and a little bit better to the point where I think I'm in a better spot now, but there's always room to grow, and hence today. So here we are. Tell us about what that journey was like, because Do Lead, your company now, was born out of what? Employee evaluation software that just wasn't there because nothing fit the culture, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the things. So I guess, yeah, I mean, I like to tell people that when I am talking about the realization that I wasn't a very good leader, there's a story, I remember it extremely well. You wake up to the fact that you're not a very good leader when you say something along the lines of, why are we doing this incredibly stupid thing, whatever it might be? And, you know, 3 people look at you and say, because you told us to. And it's like, no. I did not say, do this really stupid thing. I did not. And they said, no. You said, do this, which means this, which means that, which means we're doing this incredibly stupid thing is because you told us to. And very, very early on in my career, I realized, oh man, that's what they call influence. You know, because of my general manager, whatever it was at the time title, I made an offhanded comment and it tripped a whole bunch of dominoes that ended up in policy that I set unwittingly because of because of this offhanded comment. And that's where I realized that, you know what, I have to be far more intentional. I have to be far more aware of the things that I say because people are listening and it matters. And I just have to be aware of the influence that I have on the organization, on the people in the organization. And so I learned from that situation that I'm not as good at this leadership thing as I want to be, or as I need to be, as the organization and as the people need me to be. And I can't get better privately. This is like, if I had my druthers, I'd just go off. Nobody would have any idea, and I'd come back a much better leader. And that's just not the way leadership works, at least not active leadership. You know, I had to basically fall on my face and apologize and you know, fall on my face again and apologize again, and just keep getting better. And so, you know, I had to hold myself accountable to the standards that I wanted other people to meet, because how could I ask somebody else, how could I hold somebody else accountable if I'm not willing to first hold myself accountable to those standards? And so that was probably the beginning. And then Kevin mentioned getting an MBA. Probably part of my story is getting an MBA also. Went to the University of Notre Dame executive MBA program, go Irish. And it was transformational. I met a man there that just an absolute leadership genius. He's like leadership Yoda to me or whatever. And really challenged me. And that whole, I guess, program at the same time as doing a full-time job was completely transformational for me. And so that was really important. And then actually Do-Lead came, at least the idea, the kernel, I don't know, the epiphany or whatever came when I was driving home from my uncle's funeral. Not to be like morbid or anything, but my uncle passed away after a very long bout with cancer, and we were driving home from it, and the van was quiet. It was a somber day, and everybody was asleep, basically taking a nap except me. And I don't know, something clicked in my mind about just technology and leadership. This was 2009, I guess, or 2010. And I just became excited by the idea of like, how can technology help leaders get better? And so I couldn't sleep, just really wanted to pursue this idea. And so, Tony, you brought up this whole thing around employee evaluation software. One of the problems that we had in the organization was at Stripco, which is the name of our steel company. We made strips and coils, and we are that creative that we called the company Stripco. So But one of the problems that we had, that I had as a leader, is I was not prioritizing giving people feedback, which is something that they desperately need. And so I had one of these look myself in the mirror moments as a leader and say, you're a hypocrite. You know, you say these things, you say that this stuff is important, but you're not doing this thing. So I went to our HR director at the time and I said, hey, Doug, I need to apologize. You've been asking me to prioritize giving people feedback, and I've been saying, yeah, I'm not doing anything about it. And you're right. I have not, I made this a priority for myself, for the leadership team, or for, you know, as an example for anybody else. And so we need to do this. And so we sat down and we said, okay, what's this going to look like? And what I really wanted, like the theory I had was, if we evaluate all the people in the organization, the sum total of that should be an evaluation of the organization against our core values. And our core values at Stripco were to build relationships and to pursue stewardship. And I know that sounds probably odd to people thinking about a steel company. What, you know, why not price, quality, delivery, choose any two, or whatever, which is a common thing in manufacturing. And, you know, obviously, so anyhow, so we went out and we went looking for the software and we just couldn't find it. So I decided, well, here's an opportunity. I'm going to try my hand at trying to build some software with this problem at this other company. So I had my full-time job and then I was basically experimenting with this. And so we did that a little bit. That code base never made it anywhere, but it was one of the germinating ideas or whatever around what we do today. And so after we sold the company and I decided, you know what, I'm going to retire from the steel business. I'm going to go pursue this leadership development thing, technology enabled leadership development thing full time. Well, my wife and I actually decided to leave. We moved our family, got 5 kids. We moved everybody to the Indianapolis area because of the wonderful technology environment and startup environment around this area, which is just awesome. Just love the area and love all the people that are in that. And so what we have now is actually a coaching software platform that leadership development is just one thing that we do from it. But we do character development for youth athletes, and we do culture and employee development. So we do a lot of different things now. And as I wrap that up, I think, you know what, Eric, you just talked too much. Sorry for going too long there. But that's kind of the journey through those changes.
That's awesome. I remember a lot of those. I think I started one of those conversations where we were apologizing and it wasn't you, but I remember that day over in Plant 2. Kevin, you said you started up around the time of the great economic downturn. Sounds like Eric kind of in the same sentence almost did the same thing. Nick, did you start up somewhere in the 9-10 area?
The first one, I was still too new to any industry at that point to actually fully be aware of it, where you just needed to get my head down and then actually work for someone at that point still. So no, I didn't have that one. I thought like the one that we're in right now, like it's definitely like, you know, open doors and make me pivot. And I think as a, you know, I don't always like to use the word entrepreneur, but yeah, like when you're in a recession, so like I don't know how to for you, Kevin, but like like definitely like what's happening just now, like around the globe is fueling what I do and make sure that I'm pivoting with at least 2 of the companies that we own, because it's you need to. And I'm learning a lot. And as Eric said, you probably fall flat on your face a couple of times, but you need to. I done a post about that a couple of days ago about failure and how important failure actually is. So I didn't have the big depression, that one, but you know, like we'll see how it gets to this one.
All right. Question for you, Kevin. What would you
Yeah.
tell yourself when this idea was born and you decided to pursue it? What made you decide to pursue it? Is it because you found something that you thought was marketable, or is it because you just couldn't get along in your day to day without it, or did somebody come and offer to buy what you were selling and you didn't know you were selling? What happened?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of those, really. In the Great Recession, I went back to school, which I kind of classify as not really entrepreneurship, but taking control of my life, right? And I can use that interchangeably a little bit. And it feeds into a few years later when I got this idea. It was really a series of all three. I wanted control over my life, and I didn't have that working for somebody else, not doing what I really wanted to do, and being and going through the Great Recession as well. If you're just showing up, collecting a paycheck, and that's the only source of income you have, that's a very dangerous thing, because that can leave at any time. And then what are you doing after that? You're assembling your resume and trying to sell people on who you are, what you can do, complete and utter strangers too. And, it's a very dangerous position. It's a very risky position to be in. And I found something that I really wanted to do. I wanted to take control of my life. I wanted to get out of the 9 to 5. I wanted to do something that I found challenging, exciting. I failed so many times doing little different things that it's like Nick was saying, failure. If you're scared of failure, you're never going to get anywhere. If you're scared to get outside your comfort zone, you're not going to get anywhere. And it's just the facts of life. And once I started CarrierLets, I had to learn online marketing, how to build a website, how someone could insert their email and they'd go to MailChimp and they could download a sample of the product. I had no idea. I spent many sleepless nights because I had no idea how to do that. And Flash Forward is a very simple thing to do. You just have to go out and learn it. So I became obsessed with it. I saw the future, right? I saw what I could do, what the possibility was. And I just went for it because I was obsessed with it. And, one thing that really helped me is, oftentimes, so the riskiest thing that you do is the safest choice. And the safest choice is the riskiest thing you can do. So, my worst case scenario is that I go out, I do a product, it fails, but I'm going to get known a little bit. And the skills I learned doing that is going to, if I go back to work somewhere, is going to put me in a much better position. And it did work out that way. I was making, a living off CarrierLets. It wasn't expanding as quickly as I wanted to, which it never does, right? It's harder to get off the ground, which it always is. And you learn that it's 10 times harder to launch a product than you ever dream about. But the job came along that I really wanted. It was something that I was doing anyway. I was doing a lot of research, trying to figure out the freight market, and someone is going to come along and pay me to do that, and also help me market my product as well. So it was really good, and that job fit right into my goals. But stepping back, it's putting myself in a better position. If you go out and take those risks, learn those skills, you're going to elevate your position for anyone else who wants to hire you, even if your business fails.
All right. Awesome. So I got a question for you. We'll start with Nick, then go Kevin, then go Eric. I want each of your answers, and they don't have to be unique. If they're the same as the last guy, that's fine. But in your position now, where you're at now, what would you go back and tell your brand new entrepreneurial self? You said, yes, I'm going to go do this. Nick.
What would I tell myself? One of the things would probably don't be afraid to fail, because I think when you first try out, and I think what Kevin was saying earlier, where all of a sudden you are the designer, you are the accountant, you are the salesman, you're everyone. And I think I didn't grow quick enough at the start because I wanted to master every single element, because I come from a background of sports and I hate failing, I hate losing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be the perfect sales guy, the perfect business development guy, the perfect accountant. And if I felt I was able to lose or like fail or like whatever it may be, then I used to step back. So I didn't fall, I didn't grow. So I think I would tell myself again, just fall flat. The quicker you fall, the quicker you learn.
Quicker you get back up. Awesome. Great answer. I find that true in freight all the time in shipping. I've had several guys working for me driving a truck that they're afraid to tell me they want to go buy their own truck and get out on their own. But then when they finally do, I tell them, listen, you can be the best truck driver in the world, but if you're not an AR clerk, if you're not a mechanic, and if you're not an accountant, you're not going to be a very good truck driver, an owner operator by yourself for very long, because you got to have those other 3 jobs going to keep that thing rolling. Awesome. Didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, Kevin.
You do. Yeah, you're exactly right, Tony. You have to. It's a lot of work that people don't really factor into the equation of going out there. But to go off Nick's point, because it's very good, you're experimenting, right? Whenever you're launching a new venture, it's all one grand experiment. So most of the time, you're going to fail. You're going to figure out Thomas Edison. I think someone posted it on LinkedIn, maybe someone on this call. I've learned 10,000 ways of how not to do something. But you only have to be right once. I think Mark Cuban, that's his line too. I only have to be right once. I only have to be right once. So, get out there. Speed is your friend. Perfection is your enemy. Go out there and make as many mistakes as possible. And when in doubt, do 10 times more than you think you need to do, because it's probably going to take 10 times more. And you know what? I guarantee you, you're going to be happier with yourself if you fail by annoying too many people, calling people too many times, emailing them too many times, getting in their face too many times. You're going to feel much better about failure than if you don't do enough. So I guess that's my advice.
Awesome. Eric, what would you tell younger Eric?
I would tell younger Eric to whatever value you've placed on sales, you should multiply it by 100.
Yeah.
So
should we get Jeremy in on this?
No, don't tell him. Okay. Don't tell any salesman I said no. Obviously, you can't have a profit and loss. You can't have an income statement, right, without some revenue on the top. At least not one that you're proud of. And so for me, I was extremely passionate by the calling. I was extremely passionate for the impact that I thought we could make. We could potentially make. Those things drove me. I love the challenge of the technology and learning how to create and run a software company and do it well, and not have it be what a lot of other software companies turn out to be. And none of that is relevant unless somebody cares and enough to pay you for what you're doing. And so I have learned that. I guess I've always known it, but with respect to my startup and, Kevin, I think you said it, growing something from X to Y is relatively easy as compared to launching another product or launching a product. And we actually launched multiple products. And so I keep running my head into that same beam all the time, over and over again, because we've launched now 4, different products, and it is extremely hard. And, it just doesn't matter if you can't sell it. And so I would tell myself to overvalue sales and to focus on it far more than I ever thought I needed to.
What's your opinion about when people say I hate sales? I don't really like to do sales. I'm like,
well, if you're an entrepreneur, and especially if you're a solopreneur, if you're out there on your own, you you might as well just take up residence next to your favorite starving artist, because you might be like, okay, so you're a brilliant artist, but if nobody will commission a painting or nobody will buy one from you, it's irrelevant. And frankly, I think a lot of software engineers are actually artists by a different name, to be honest with you. But so, you know, here's the dirty little secret. The truth be told, I am not the strongest sales CEO. And it's actually hard to say out loud, because I wish I was a stronger sales CEO. And it's something that I work on all the time, because it's an area personally in my journey I need to get better at. And so if somebody says, well, I don't like sales or whatever, I actually can empathize with that. I understand it. I mean, when we were going through a big transformation, the steel company, we went from a $50-ish million company to over $100 million company. And it was not easy. It was the work of hundreds of people over many, many years. But as I look back on it, it was a well of a lot easier than from going 0 to 1 million. To me, as I look back on my personal experience, it's way more difficult to go from 0 to 1 million than it is from 50 to 100, because of things like momentum and the fact that you're not validating, you know, a product that you're just not sure about, things like that. There's already a $50 million market for what you're doing. Finding the next 50 is a lot different than when you're at 0 and you have an idea and you go talk to somebody and you know, people just either care or they don't care. And well, Kevin said it, it's 10 times harder than you think it's going to be.
Who said that? Like, I can't remember who it was. Like, there was a post on LinkedIn again. There's some amazing posts that fly by every day on my feed, and I commented on it as well, where it was like, my wife used to run her own sales and marketing company, and I think when I was going through my journey as like a solopreneur, as you said it, there was a couple of things I kind of came across on. One was, I don't want to do it alone. That was one thing. I was like, I'm really good at certain things. Do I want to be really good at everything? No. I just want to surround myself with superstars that are good at it. I'd rather pay someone, because that's the kind of thing, you put a value on your time. Like, one of your hours in your life is worth X. If somebody else can do it cheaper, why would you do it? You know, and if someone is better at it than you are. And but one thing that I found, and I'm always, every time I teach someone like sales, I'm not going to say I'm a sales guru, but there's a certain things that I found really, really intriguing, where you grab yourself a deck of cards, 52 cards. Am I correct? 52, 40? Yeah, 52 cards. Mm-hmm. So, and I just give it to that person that wants to do sales. And I was like, okay, just, you know, I want you to grab the 4 aces. Just let them pick out. I was like, just put all the cards to the left. That's not an ace. And when you have the 4 aces, and then I'll let them do that a couple of times when you shuffle the cards. And you kind of ask him questions, or he or she questions. They're like, okay, do you always get the 4 aces, the first 4 cards? No, you don't. You don't know when they're coming. So it's 48 no's and 4 yeses. You're after those 4 yeses. Those are your sales. But you need to go, it could be that's the 4 last cards, right? That's your yeses. But if you quit after 32 no's, you're never going to get the other 4 yeses. You need to go through the whole deck to get your 4 yeses. And that's kind of like what my wife taught me. And I was like, that's, you know, that deck of card analysis, I was like, I'm going to use that forever.
I am too, I think, because that's a great analogy. It really is. And going off your point on wanting to pay people that, you know, accounting people that can actually do it, who actually maybe enjoy accounting, right? It's a luxury that you only get if you make enough sales, right? And that could be investor money, that could be product money, but you have to go out and bring that revenue in, and then you can hire people. So when people say, I'm an entrepreneurship, I don't like sales. And Chris said it very well. Go over to the starving artist, because that's really all you are. I mean, that is it. And it takes a long time to get to the point where you actually get to keep some of that money that you bring in, and instead of dividing it, your vendors, your employees, everyone else. But those luxuries in life to be able to move out of trying to do everything, you can only do that if you sell enough. There's no other way.
That's where it starts. The funny thing is and I held on to that thought. What you were saying earlier, Kevin, was how it's actually risky to have a full-time employment because everybody that's some of the early books that you read, and it's like, was it Rich Dad Poor Dad? One of my first books I ever read, and it was like, get a job. Make sure that you get a job, a steady income that pays your bills, blah, blah, blah. But as you say, that's actually, if you've went through 2008, you know how risky that is. And even now, I see it around me, left, right, and center, everybody that had a really steady job, that's no longer that steady because they don't have an income. And, as an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, owning your own business, you can pivot. And you're the person that decides how you pivot and where you go to. If you're an employee, you wait for the kind of your leader, your employer to say which direction you're going to go into. And if they say we don't know what to do next, there is no more work, there is no more sales, you're out of a job. So it's actually riskier to have a steady job than not. And I thought that was a really valid point you mentioned.
I've always thought that too. I teach my kids create 2 sources of income at least. At least, but always have 2. That way you get to do what you love, and it doesn't matter what it pays. On to the next thing.
Exactly.
What aspect of leadership makes an entrepreneur great? Anybody? What is the single greatest piece of influential characteristic in leadership that transfers to that entrepreneurial environment that is the difference maker?
I think there's two things there, because you can be an entrepreneur, not a leader.
Correct.
Because I think you really need to ask yourself that question if you want to be a leader. Because leadership, it's not like you put a hat on and now I walk in the office. You were saying, Eric, earlier on, you were given all this talk or saying comments, and people would take that up, and because of your role and your status. But be really aware, when you are a leader, you don't take that hat off when you walk out of the office. You're a leader at home, you're a leader and I think the biggest thing is a good leader makes other people feel good rather than a bad leader, puts themselves on it. You see all these quite cliche images on Google that you can just find out where, someone with a whip at the back, but a good leader leads from the front and not really at the back. I think that's really true. So yes, I think you can either be an entrepreneur or a leader. You can be both. On an entrepreneurial mindset, I don't know. I think that's difficult. I think that's why I don't like the word entrepreneur, because again, a lot of people now you've even got courses to become an entrepreneur. I'm like, okay, well, what is an entrepreneur? There's the thing is, I love what I do, and I think any entrepreneur will say this: although sleep is important, you don't sleep. You work so much harder than anybody else, especially at the start when you need to get from 0 to 1 million. You work harder than anybody else. You fail, and that's what nobody sees. You fail, you get up. You sweat. You sit with your hands in your hair more times than I can remember. So yeah, I would say it's not for the lighthearted to become a solopreneur and entrepreneur. But that's why I always say, surround yourself with amazing people that when you're down, because that will happen, make sure that you surround yourself with the right individuals that can pick you up and that love to see you win rather than try to take you down.
Awesome. Anybody else? I think to be an entrepreneur, to go out on your own, to start a business, to get going, you have to have some leadership qualities, because somebody who's not a very good leader isn't going to step out. They're not going to take that first step. They're not going to start a business. They're not going to go invest the money and the effort and the work to do it. Did I freeze up again?
A little
Just a
bit,
little
but
bit. It's okay.
You're back.
All right. That's robo me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it takes some leadership skill and ability to be able to start up, to take that step out of what feels safe, working a 9 to 5, to go out and take that step. Eric.
Yeah, I mean, so you can put the adjective entrepreneurial leadership on there, or family leadership, or civic leadership, or enterprise leadership, or team leadership, or whatever you want. But the word that stays is leadership. And for me, I'll answer the question both philosophically, which is maybe a little boring, but practically, which hopefully will be more meaningful to people. So philosophically, I think everybody goes for, what are the skills of a leader? You know, how do I do this, or how do I do that in certain leadership roles? And so there's this skill set that people aspire to attain, and schools teach you, and things like that. But as you progress, you realize, you know what, it's really, there's more to it than that. There's actually a mindset behind being a leader as well. And so rather than a skill set, which is just, you know, a range of abilities that you may have and your strengths inside there, there's a mindset where you, as a leader, you have models in your brain about, you know, this is the type of problem that I need to lead through. And so I have a model on how to do that, versus this is the context that I need to lead through. And so I have a model on how to do that. And so you grow as a leader by developing a mindset. But even that is not enough, because what makes a great leader, in my opinion, is the posture of the leader's heart. In other words, it's the heart set of a leader. Because all of you know, you've worked for good leaders, and you've probably worked for bad leaders. And you all know who the good ones were. They just popped into your mind. And who the bad ones were, they equally popped into your mind, maybe more viscerally. And the truth of the matter is, what it really comes down to is the leader's heart is, and this is actually an acronym that we use in one of our character development products. But you know, does the leader have humility? Does the leader show empathy? Is the leader authentic? You know, is the leader does the leader take responsibility? Does the leader show thankfulness? Is the leader trustworthy? You know, HEART. Really, it comes down to these things that are actually character. They're actually questions of the heart. Because if in my experience, we oftentimes go through the progression the way I just gave it, which is, you learn the skills, then you develop the mindset, and then you realize, oh wait, none of this matters unless I'm actually worth following, and I need to be a leader of character. And I just think it would be so much better if we trained up new leaders to work on the heart first, because developing then the mindsets around the models around different contexts and things like that, you just have more confidence that the leader is going to go directionally right. And then picking up the skills to do this or do that, you know, becomes even easier in that point. So for me, you know, philosophically about leadership, it really comes down to the heart set of the leader, and is that person, does that person have the character, much more the character that's worth following. Much more practically, I would highly recommend people read a book called Multipliers. This book was written by Liz Weissman, brilliant author, brilliant book. Just probably the most, I probably read, I don't know, pushing 500 leadership books. And this is the one that I tell people had the single most impact on me as a leader. Because what a multiplier does, she describes a set of practices that a multiplier has. And her research shows that leaders who are multipliers actually voluntarily from the people they lead get twice as much out of them as someone who is not a multiplier. And the antithesis, the other side of the coin, is a diminisher. And a diminisher also has a set of practices that they follow. And if you just take those labels, and you don't need to know, you don't need to have read the book, just think about what they mean. Those words mean either, do you want to work for a multiplier, or do you want to work for a diminisher? And you guys, I'm sure, have all worked for somebody who probably accidentally, I mean, there's jerks and idiots in the world that might have done it on purpose, but most of us, me included, are accidental diminishers. We diminish people by accident just because we have not, we didn't realize what we were doing. And that challenged me significantly. And so probably one of the most important things I did to grow as a leader was I took that book and I gave it to my CFO, because he's in meetings with me. We talk about things that I don't talk about with other people. He basically saw the whole picture. And I said, hey, you're a reader. Would you read this and then hold me accountable to the practices of a multiplier? And he was like, what? Okay. I mean, he reads fiction most of it. So he's like, all right, sure. I'll do this. And so I'll never forget it. I went into his office. He said, hey, Eric, shut the door. Very common that we'd have closed door conversations between me and the CFO. It happened all the time. We'd talk about things that were money or whatever, they were private. So we'd shut the door. And he says, sit down. He never told me to sit down, but he says, sit down. I was like, okay, what's going on? He's got something to say. And he opened up his drawer and he pulls out this book and he sets it on his desk. And he said, I want to talk to you about this. I said, oh, cool. What happened? He's like, well, you were a diminisher earlier today. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I have no idea. So, what are you talking about? What happened? Who did I diminish? He said, me. And I said, I did not. No, okay, wait a minute. What did I do? Like, what did I do? He says, well, and he recounted, we were in a meeting, the leadership team was in there, and Chuck was his name. Chuck brought up something, and he said, I told you this whole thing, I laid it all out, and you were like, okay, and then you moved right on. You didn't even acknowledge it. You diminished me. You did not acknowledge this really important thing that I thought that I articulated really well, and it was important to me, and you just, so for me, I was sitting there going, that's a great point. I've thought about it. I knew some of the stuff he said. I didn't know some of the other stuff he said. I just did calculus in my head right there. And I was like, cool. I resolved the issue in my mind and I just moved on. For me, that's fine. He was a big help. He helped me see it. Like, but my experience is irrelevant to my leadership. His experience is what mattered. And what I did, apparently, and to everybody in the room, is I completely ignored him. I didn't care what he said, and I just moved on. And turns out that's a practice of a diminisher. And so he showed me that, and without the accountability there to say, hey, call me on this, I never could have had that moment of growth. I would have moved on, and I never would have gotten any better as a leader, because I never would have had that feedback from him without basically asking him or I guess giving him permission to, call me on it when I did something wrong. So anyhow, highly recommend Liz's book, Multipliers. I've probably read it, I don't know, 8 times now or something. It challenges me as a leader all the time.
Follow-up question. What's the right answer when Chuck says what he presents his data that you ask him to present, just like you asked him to present, and it's time to move on? What's the right answer? What do you do? What's the right answer?
Well, the first thing is I have to acknowledge it. based on the scenario that you gave me there, you said, it's time to move on. So as the leader, I am the one running the meeting, responsible for these 8 expensive people and their time and all that kind of stuff. It's my responsibility to move on. I at least need to acknowledge him, thank him for his work, thank him. And then I probably need to commit to some sort of follow-up action with him separately, saying, we have to move on right now, or it's time to be done because, some other person or he has another thing that he needs to go to. And so what I did was I did all this calculus real quick in my mind, and I moved on, and he has no way of knowing what's going on in my mind. And so what I needed to say is I needed to acknowledge, I needed to verbalize something about what was going on there. And I needed to at least acknowledge it and at least give him some sort of idea of how he could expect me to interact with that if I didn't have time to do it right then. At least that's the first thing that comes to my mind. And
Cool.
All of you can correct me if I'm wrong.
We're here to learn, man.
Yes.
Kevin, what do you want to add to that?
There's not much I can add. Eric and Nick too. I mean, they had the perfect answers for it. I will say that I was totally unqualified to be a leader, especially in that difficult stage of 0 to a million, right? Or 0 to 100,000 even. There's a lot of hard choices that you have to make. There's you don't know what you're doing. Often first time that you're in entrepreneurship or first time you launch something, I told someone recently, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have any money, and I didn't know how to go get money. Right. And that it complicates things. But as Eric said, if your heart is right or your mind is right, then you can go out and learn the skills, because it is trial and error. There's a lot of failure in that, just like there is in sales or launching a new product. Leadership is very difficult, and it is experience based. And he said it was a skill set and skills, and you don't just walk up and start shooting three pointers from day one, right? You have to practice it. You have to go through the trials and tribulations of that. And I was completely unqualified for it. And it's been a very slow grind of learning sales. But, leading correctly with your heart or your mind, having humility, trying to make the best decision, hearing people out, acknowledging them are things that you learn. And there's some people that are kind of naturals at it. But it's just the same thing as I say in sales, right? If you're a sales manager, you want someone with the right mind or the right heart, right? Someone who wants to go out there and do it, make the sell, that they just have that mentality. You can teach them how to sell if they want to be successful. And it's not the killer appetite or anything like that. Oftentimes it's people who want to be successful. They've got their mind right to go out there and do it, and they want it. You can teach them to do anything. Leadership, sales, whatever. If their mind's not right, if their heart's not right, it doesn't really matter at that point, because it's all up to you at the end of the day and that individual. So, but yeah, it was great listening to Eric and Nick just now.
That's a great point. And I think the last time we were on, I was on the show together with Trey. Trey Griggs was on the show, and he as well. And this reminds me of that, where a lot of times we put the wrong people on the bus, which was fun, and then when they are on the bus, they actually need to look if they're on the right seat. Because a lot of times, and this is one thing I've learned over the years as well, where your best sales guy, your best recruiter, whatever it all may be, they might not be the best leaders. And a lot of times, and I think where I went wrong the first time was the best sales guy, the best designer I had on board, the best recruiter, they became leaders. Not actually thinking the person with the right, mindset, skill set as a leader. They were maybe not the best salesperson, maybe not the best, but they were able to push everybody to the next level. And I think that's where I went wrong the first time as a unqualified, unexperienced leader myself, that you think that it's the experience and knowledge that makes someone a leader rather than the mindset in it.
And a good analogy for that is if you look at any professional sports, right? And over here you have Major League Baseball managers. You don't get the Ken Griffey Juniors. NBA coaches aren't Michael Jordan because they are the best. They're the best at what they do, and a lot of it comes really natural to them, where they can't explain it. You have the marginal players or the players who've never made it, and their talent only took them so far, and they had to learn the game. They had to be students of the game. They had to be students of leadership to be able to teach other great people with better talent than they did how to maximize what they can do. And you see that in the sports world. But you're right, Nick. I mean, a lot of times the best salesperson becomes the manager. And he's probably the worst choice for a manager, but he performs, sells the best.
Awesome. Well, guys, we could go on for hours. I'm fascinated and I love growing, but I think we're getting short on time here. So follow these guys on LinkedIn. Eric, send me the info on that book. I'll post it on the Hold My Beer page, and we'll get it up there. If you guys have anything you want to contribute before we sign off, anybody? All right.
No, the only thing, follow us, all of us, and I think we'd love to hear from anybody that's been listening, and it's great to fill in for TJ tonight, and I hope he had a great anniversary. So
awesome.
Shout out to TJ. Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Thanks guys for coming on. I really appreciate you, and reach out, follow each other, and we'll have to have you guys on again because this was great, and there's way more here to be learned from. Thanks for your experience. Thanks for your advice.
Thanks.